Make that 3 straight losses for the Milwaukee Bucks after losing Monday night's game to the Boston Celtics 108 to 119. Giannis and Dame combined for 63 points, but it wasn't enough. What more do we need to see from the Bucks? We'll discuss all of that and more on the other side of the intro.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, and you can catch me weekly on the Technical File podcast as well as the Pack a Day podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, the founder of BrewHoop.com and the longtime voice of the pod. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Your favorite podcast, Locked On Bucks, is now also a newsletter. We're introducing Locked On Bucks Daily Newsletter, your one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. So sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. Again, that's lockedondaily.com. And start your day with the all-new and free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Frank, last night when we talked after the Bucks lost in a disappointing fashion to the Nets, we were like, hey, not sure what exactly to expect from the Bucks against the Celtics, but hoping for more competitive energy. And they were definitely more competitive tonight, especially through the first 3 quarters. Then it wasn't so pretty. One thing that stood out to me just looking at how the game flow went was just the amount of threes the Celtics got up. We knew coming into the game they were going to look to get that many threes up, but seeing the Celtics score 10 more threes in this game, it's hard to overcome that for the Bucks. But what stands out to you the most from this 11-point loss to the Celtics? Third straight for the Bucks.
I mean, it's kind of a par for the course type of loss to the Celtics. I mean, I would have expected this kind of loss even if the Bucks had won their first 3 games, more or less. I think I tweeted out after the game, but basically a 3-point line. I mean, this is kind of like one of the things that I know a lot of people don't love about kind of the current version of the NBA game, but pretty much like everything, just like the story of all these games kind of comes down to 3-point shooting. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Bucks, over the first 4 games, the first game, they were plus 24. Just looking at like points scored off a 3-pointer. So not like normalizing for the number of attempts or anything, but
okay.
First game, they were plus 24. They made 8 more threes than the Sixers, and they shot way better than the Sixers in that game. The Sixers shot poorly, and they won by 15. So, pretty much the entire reason they won was they just shot the ball better, right? You can think of it in those simplistic terms. And it's been kind of a completely flipped story here since then. So they were minus 24 against the Bulls. 21 makes for the Bulls compared to 13 for the Bucks, and obviously the Bulls shot a much higher percentage. Mm-hmm. And against the Nets, similar story, minus 18. They hit 6 fewer threes against the Nets, and they lose by whatever it was, 13 points, I think, to the Nets. And tonight they lose by 11, and they were outscored by 30 points from 3-point line. And so, I seen a number of kind of people comment about like, oh, well, Bud immediately came in and, solved the kind of math problem for the Bucks. And I think, look, the number of 3-point attempts coming into tonight, mm-hmm. I don't know if you've got it in front of you, Camille, like tonight, there was obviously a more pronounced difference in the number of threes attempted, which isn't surprising. The Celtics take an absolute crap ton of threes. And
in the grand 47 tonight.
Yeah. And in the grand scheme of the universe, you could have done worse, I guess. 18 of 47, like the Bucks have seen worse, certainly, in terms of opponent 3-point shooting. Was, I think, what was it, like 37, 38%, something like that. So it wasn't like an outrageous percentage from the Celtics tonight. But the problem was, I think, what the Bucks like 8 of 31, something on that order.
25.8% for the Bucks from 3 tonight.
Yeah. So, they had their worst 3-point shooting games. The last 2 games, they've been, I think, 33, 30, and now 26 or whatever percent they were tonight. So just getting worse and worse from 3-point range, which, again, not to kind of oversimplify. I think we talked obviously yesterday a lot about the kind of broader issues in the prior 2 games in terms of the lack of defensive rebounding, transition defense, over helping, and just how simple it's been for teams to generate easy open looks, which is exactly the kind of problems that the Celtics are going to just kill you for.
Right.
And tonight was a weird game because Jason Tatum, they really contained Jason Tatum. He didn't really have his game going. He got really frustrated. But Peyton Pritchard pretty much offset, if you give of Peyton Pritchard's 8 threes, you give 5 of them to Jason Tatum, then everything looks like a lot more normal kind of Celtics win. So whatever, like Bucks fans can say, oh, Peyton Pritchard is going to hit 8 threes most games. Oh yeah, well, Jason Tatum went for 8. Celtics fans will say well, you're not going to hold on Jason Tatum like that.
Right.
Well, yeah, but Peyton Pritchard isn't going to score 28 or whatever he had. So kind of all came out in the wash to an extent. But I would say this felt like more of a normal, you played a really good team and you couldn't shoot for shit, and they shot a solid to good number, and they got up a lot of threes, which they normally do, and that's the way it went. And they basically were competitive for 3 quarters. I thought the Pritchard 3 at the end of the 3rd quarter was kind of just a kick in the face, whatever it was. I think the Bucks were up 80-79 at one point. And then what was it, like a 25-5 run, or
it was a crazy run. Yeah, I had it from when the Bucks were up 75-72 in the 3rd quarter. It was like a little bit over 5.5 minutes left, and from the next 7 minutes, the Celtics went like a 23-7 run to be up 95-82 into the 4th quarter. So it was a quick blitz from the Celtics for sure. Yeah,
and again, I think offensively, the offense obviously they weren't consistent enough tonight. And again, they were probably fine through most of 3 quarters. But, again, then they kind of run into this rough spot, and, Giannis lineups were again really bad. Portis lineups were again really bad. Brooke again was like the positive guy, right? He was +2, I think. And everything else was terrible, especially the Bobby Giannis lineups just didn't work at all. I don't know that they were as egregious of Bobby Portis, completely losing dudes as maybe tonight, but still examples. I forget who it was with. There was a situation where Bobby's man set a screen for Pritchard, and he kind of just got stuck in no man's land. This is in the 2nd quarter, and Pritchard just kind of took the screen, went to his left a little bit, and it might have been Gary Trent, couldn't get over, and Bobby was kind of not really in no man's land. And, and, again, and he didn't do anything offensively really either. And just here's the thing, I won't go too deep into it now because we can talk a little about rotations. We saw a little Andre Jackson, which we talked about wanting to see last night. But, just, again, this team is still Giannis talked, we didn't hear it before we did the pod yesterday. Giannis talked about needing an identity last night. I don't think they found that tonight, but they're clearly searching for how they're going to win basketball games. And, again, tonight, obviously, at the end of the day, the calculus didn't work. And offensively, okay, fine. Yeah, we can talk about how they really, the Chris Middleton absence
it was looming tonight.
Glaring much more than you really wish it did, because it's just Damian and Giannis together are negative on the season, which last year they were a +10. So go figure. I still think a lot of it's small sample size theater, but yeah, their story's the same. They're obviously a team. I think they look better tonight, but better. Are you going to call a double-digit loss, to the Celtics, a moral victory? That ain't a good place to be.
It's not. But again, like we've been saying, it is early on in the season. And to your point about the 3-point discrepancy, the game was close in the first half in particular. The Bucks went into halftime with a small lead. But at that time, the Celtics were shooting almost as poorly from 3 as the Bucks were at that time in the game. They shot more threes at that time, but they were around the same percentage. But in that second half, the Celtics really started taking off from 3. You saw a lot more of those going in. So in the first half, the Bucks were 5-19 from 3, 26%. And then they were 3 of 12 in the second half, 25%. Meanwhile, the Celtics went 8 of 26 in the first half for about 31%. And then in the second half, the Celtics were 10 of 21 from three, which is about 48% from three in the second half alone. There's a lot more to talk about. We can dive a bit more into Dame and Giannis tonight. They did combine for 63 points. Saw some things from them and saw a lot from Brook, especially in the first half offensively. And then I also want to ask you, Frank, about some players that might be trending down early on in this season, kind of get into that rotation conversation. So let's get into that after this break. Gotta love Game Time for all of your ticketing needs. With the NBA season in full swing, Game Time is the place to go to grab your tickets. And Game Time isn't just clutch for NBA tickets or sporting events. Game Time has you covered for every single event. So if it's a show or a concert, Game Time got you covered. Game Time also has a feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. My personal favorite Game Time feature is being able to see the view from my seat before I purchase a ticket, especially when I'm going to a new place, a new arena. I like to know what I'm going to get before I get there. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Frank. As I mentioned, Dame and Giannis combined for 63 points. I thought overall it was a pretty good night from them. But as we mentioned earlier, it made me also say, I just really cannot wait for Chris Middleton to get back so the Bucks can have a consistent third offensive option. I feel like in this game, it was the most consistent that we've seen Giannis so far in this season, 26 shot attempts. So he was great, especially in the first half. I loved a lot of how he was playing. The end of the half of the first half, some questionable decisions from him. He had the 2 threes that he pulled really quick, didn't pass the ball quick enough to Wright to give him enough time for a buzzer-beating three. And then in the fourth quarter, starting it off, still trying to be aggressive, attack Al Horford, caught a couple offensive fouls, some turnovers from some travels as well. And then you had Dame, who was able to drop 33 tonight, in large part due to a huge day at the free throw line, 17 of 18 from the free throw line. Something I didn't necessarily expect to see as much, given what we heard in the offseason about some of the NBA's point of emphasis with how they were going to call games, saying it was going to look a bit more like what you saw after All-Star break last year. But Dame getting 18 free throw attempts, that is a good night for him. But they just needed someone else. As I mentioned, you had Brook for a little bit as well in the first half in particular. He finished the game 5 of 14 from the field, though, 0 of 4 from three. So the three-point shot still not consistent for him. And then the only other double-digit scorer you had for the Bucks was Gary Trent Jr., who was 3 of 8 on the evening.
I mean, I would actually disagree with that. I don't think Giannis played well.
Not at all.
26 shots, 7 turnovers, 2 of 6 on the foul line. -19, didn't feel his impact defensively. Again, like mere mortal standards, of course, like he put up numbers and I liked his aggression. I mean, he really tried to attack, took advantage of a lot of times when he had smaller guys on him in the post and was able to get baseline a bunch. But, like he was a big reason why they, ultimately couldn't score efficiently, right? Like when Dame was off the floor. Again, Giannis plus DeLon Wright and a cloud of dust, like they just aren't effective. And I mean, this is in a way, it's kind of downstream of Dame to an extent because like when you have Dame, you feel like you have to have a defensive backup, right? Mm-hmm. Like it makes sense. You would complement Dame with the defensive backup. I like the DeLon Wright signing, but I was saying all summer, like feels like they're short a creator, and without Chris Middleton, and it feels like you're down two creators. Because again, it's just, I just don't think, especially with Bobby not playing well, and just obviously the lack of depth in general on this team, it just doesn't feel like Giannis, like it feels like when Giannis and Dame are out there together, like, okay, like they should be they should be able to do stuff. Although again, they've had a negative differential so far this season with 2 on the floor, which is just like disaster class, right? Like you can't have that. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't. Again, we saw this. I feel like we saw this in the first game last season for Giannis. Like he struggled more in terms of his shooting in that game. But in this game, again, like, he's trying, but he's trying on offense at least, but the impact wasn't there again defensively. And I don't really trust pretty much anybody defensively other than Brook. I mean, again, I thought Brook was good defensively. I think that was a big reason why he had a positive plus minus again. Mm-hmm. I did like Giannis playing some high low with Brook. I like the way he was looking for Brook inside, flashing to the charge circle. Got some easy buckets that way. You mentioned, he wasn't making his threes though. But again, like kind of in my kind of like list of problems, the Giannis counting stats isn't really a problem. But it just feels like there's just something about like the way he's getting his numbers. It just like the team obviously isn't playing at a high level offensively with him. And then again, like defensively, just again, like you kind of look at this defense, like Bobby's been more of a disaster than usual this year, which is like extra disaster. And like Taurean Prince can't really keep guys in front of him, like I feel like this is the hard part is like he really needs to make threes to be like a passable big minutes guy. I think this is why Laker fans obviously like felt like he was overextended as a starter last year. Like if he's coming off the bench playing 15, 20 minutes, it's one thing, but like right now he's got to play a ton of minutes and, they put him on Jaylen Brown. Again, it just felt like he was always like a half step slow. I thought it was interesting they put Gary Trent on Jason Tatum, which not that Gary shut down Jason Tatum, but I feel like
it's a little frustrating for him. Yeah,
I feel like my proof of concept from what I've seen from those guys, I've felt better about Trent than Prince. And I think it's, I think if you think of it logically, you'd say like, well, you probably put Trent on Brown because Jalen's more of a wing. Tatum's bigger, a little bit more like can kind of use his size to overwhelm small guys. So maybe put Prince on him, but they did not. And Prince had a ton of foul trouble. And that was really I don't know if without Prince having all that foul trouble, I don't know if we actually would have seen Andre Jackson Jr. in that first half. And then Andre had 4 fouls in 9 minutes, so he didn't do a lot better. But he gave it his best shot at Jaylen Brown. And actually, I mean, they kept it close while Andre was in the game. So as much as he was just kind of like fouling every other possession, like it wasn't actually hurting them a whole lot. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine Giannis was happy with his night. It was, again, I think a frustrating night for him, even though, kind of his counting stats ultimately got to, kind of his usual sort of levels. But yeah, I don't know. I would say Dame was much more encouraging in that regard. And I was encouraged by his whistle. I thought the Bucks actually got a good whistle in this game.
They really did.
Dame was getting like his, again, we won't call it like grifting, but like just knowing when he's got contact and going up and shooting through it and forcing the refs to make a call. I don't know. Did he have like three shot fouls or something like that? Like
I think
he got, that was a big reason why he had so many free throws, because he probably had half his free throw attempts off of like fouls on threes. And again, that was not like the defense just getting under him or fouling him when he shot. It was like him really looking for that foul and forcing the refs to make the call. So yeah, Dame was fine. He didn't really have his 3-point shot tonight, but Boston, I think, is generally, we've seen them like, they'll do different things. They basically, I think, would rather have Giannis attack downhill than, let the Bucks kind of beat them with open threes. And certainly the Bucks didn't shoot a ton of threes and they didn't make the ones they took tonight. So kind of nice that, I mean, as someone who says like, well, Dame takes bad threes when he's playing well or playing poorly, tonight he put up a ton of numbers without making many threes, right? Only a couple threes he made and was still able to put up a big scoreline. So yeah, I don't know, Camille. Maybe that's one of those somewhat silver linings. Like it's not like Dame's like just struggling or something like that. Like I think he's had 3 30-point games out of 4 or something like that. So yeah, maybe that's a positive. I don't know if we're looking for some silver linings.
I mean, for Dame, normally I'm like, it's a good Dame game when I see him finishing around the rim too. And he was able to get a lot of finishes at the rim off as well. The free throw disparity was a big one for him to kind of help salvage that. Again, surprised that he was able to get 18 free throws by himself in this game. I mean, the Celtics as a team shot 19 free throws. So Dame almost single-handedly got more free throw attempts than the entire Celtics team. But you mentioned Andre Jackson Jr. kind of being able to sneak in some minutes there. He played, I think, like the last 5 minutes or so in the second quarter, in large part, I think, because Taurean Prince got into the foul trouble, had 3 fouls at that point. And I was wondering if over time, as the season continues, if play from the vets start trending down, will that open the door for some young guys to get a chance for more opportunity, I would say? Because in this game, and I mean, even in the last game as well, the OG bench mob, we gave them a lot of props against Philly, Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton. But over the last couple of games, not the strongest games for those two. Bobby Portis played a season low in minutes tonight. Again, very small sample size. It's only 4 games in. But Bobby only played 19 minutes tonight, his first game under 20 minutes this season, and only 4 points, which you expect a lot more out of Bobby. And for Pat Connaughton, I love the effort, but some big questions about his foot speed keeping up defensively against some other guards and other teams. So I want to get your opinion on that, Frank, about just if there are any players you see are trending down or things that have stood out to you in that regard, and then also talk a bit more about what we might need to see more of from the Bucks going forward. So let's get into that right after this. All right. So, Frank, I said my piece on how I felt about Bobby and PC for good parts of the night. And to your point as well that you made earlier about the Bucks being a shot creator too short, I just feel like they're kind of a ball handler short as well. Because when Dame comes off the court, it just feels like it's a lot more clunky offensively, just trying to get in the sets, trying to initiate the offense. I'm not sure if DeLon Wright is really that guy to be a backup point guard, because it seems to me whenever he is in that situation, the decision making isn't crisp. You had the weird turnover like at half court when Bobby's trying to set a half court screen to free him
Oh
up.
my God.
Dribbles into Bobby. They just lose the ball. They're on the ground. And that was like a stretch in the second quarter where, or was that in the first? It was a stretch where it was like the Bucks just started kind of turning the ball over, having too many mistakes. But what, in your opinion, are some guys or players that are trending down right now for the team? And what is it that you hope to see more of going forward?
Do you know that GIF? It's like from an old only on TV commercial of some sort, and it's like some like chubby middle-aged white guy like carrying like a bunch of cleaning supplies, like, and he's like kind of stumbles over his car and just like
And everything
comically like
flies up in
falls
there.
down and everything goes flying. I feel like I've used that to describe Thonmaker's rebounding at various points. Probably wasn't very nice, but yeah, that the play where DeLon
I couldn't believe it.
dribbles into Bobby and they all just fall down. That was right after they had another turnover, right?
Yep.
I can't remember
I
exactly
think
what
that
it
might
was.
have been right after Giannis tried to do a quick like dump off pass, but it got deflected.
Yeah,
and
they
then
went the other way.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, the transition numbers we talked about the other night, like the cleaning the glass transition numbers, which sometimes like maybe they don't really seem all that accurate, but tonight they said the Celtics buried the Bucks. Bucks did nothing, and Celtics were like +8 added, which is very good. Which I don't think that goes against my eye test of what we saw. The defensive rebounding was at least way better, so yay. So maybe that's something. But obviously the Celtics in particular, I mean, they're not shooting a ton of threes. Like they're 5 out for much of the time.
Mhm.
It's not like they're really prioritizing crashing the glass either. And the Bucks really didn't do anything with offensive rebounds. And that's sort of like, I think it's the identity question. It's like, if you're not going to shoot a lot of threes, then what are you? Are you, we're going to hurt you with our size team? Are you like, again, like to me, you got to either lean into, we're going to bludgeon you with our size and offensive rebounding and create extra possessions that way, or we're going to shoot a bunch of threes and try to hurt you that way. And right now the Bucks are kind of like just stuck in between. And probably the worst of all is they're not making threes at nearly the rate of their opponents, which to me, that's the good news there is that's probably a lot of noise, like, and so just a warning, right? If the Bucks, go in and like win the next couple games, it's probably going to be because they just shoot better than the other team. And then we'll we have to be careful. Like you don't get into this game of like projecting a whole bunch of other positive traits onto them when really it was just like, yeah, the ball just went in and it didn't go in for the other guys. Right. So that's kind of a little bit in the back of my mind. I mean, this is always sort of the true again with NBA games, like, how much is just shooting variance game to game, which is not a fun thing to talk about. Like it doesn't make for good podcast material, Camille, but we at least needed to acknowledge that that's a huge part of game to game variance. And, when teams play quote unquote well or poorly, like it's because they make shots go in or not. And yeah, fair enough. That's the point of basketball, right? To put the ball in the hoop. So yeah, I mean, I think as far as like kind of what we see moving forward, I mean, part of me is like, well, you got to figure out how to get more 3-pointers up. So, okay, well, Chris Middleton, if you want to come back and play NBA basketball, that would be great. That would probably help. I think I think figuring out something with these Giannis, I think we saw it a little bit, like the Giannis Trent like combination. Gary's like been kind of steady. Like he hasn't had like a big game at any point offensively, but he's been pretty steady. I think like they need to figure out, and not that Gary's like some lead ball handler type guy or something like that, but just to get some sort of shot creation. I think they need to figure out if when Dame's resting, how do you lean into, Giannis, Gary Trent, 2-man game, dribble handoff type stuff. And Trent's got to, make some plays off the dribble that, maybe right now he's not making. Cause otherwise, like, again, you're going to get stuck like throwing post ups to Bobby, and
like we saw at the end of the third quarter.
Yeah. And it's just, and I think the other thing too is like there were stints in this game just because of how small the Celtics will play at times where it's like there's nobody for Bobby to guard. Like when he's out there with Brooke, and it's like was guarding like Jason Tatum or like a wing at various points, and like no amount of Bobby Portis mismatched post-ups are going to like win a math game against him guarding like all-star wing players, And so this, I think, kind of raises this point of like, okay, so I think Doc Rivers is clearly leaning towards it's early. I got to be somewhat consistent with my rotations because I'm just trying to get these guys some continuity so they can learn how to play together. But at what point do you actually like force guys to take accountability for not playing well and give other guys a chance, right?
That's the question I have.
And so, I think the two guys to me that, have the best case for injecting something is, AJ Green. If you want 3-point shooting, look no further than AJ Green. He puts up 10, 11 threes per 36, which, is up there with basically the kind of highest volume 3-point shooters like Dame, Steph, and Malik Beasley. Or again, from the defensive side, completely different type of player, Andre Jackson, who, again, in his little stint, fouled the crap out of Jaylen Brown. But, I don't know that he actually like hurt the Bucks. I mean, I think were pretty much played it even during that stretch. He had that floater, Camille, like he sees Jaylen Brown and he like throws up this weird 10-foot floater, which thankfully goes in. But man, just such a strange offensive game.
Yeah, because that corner look for him, he had the floater in the one possession. Then like another time he caught the ball in the corner, had that space, dribbled into the defenders, and then just kicked it out. And then the third time, I think he like put up the 3, which I said it before, but an interesting shot form for Andre Jackson Jr. When he's shooting. He missed that 3, but at least he put it up. But again, I don't think that he was a detriment too much. Like he did help put the Celtics into the bonus during his time out there, but knowing he's not going to play too many minutes and that he's young and we know he has a fouling problem, you want to see him get better with the fouls. We've mentioned it ad nauseum now about Andre Jackson Jr. so he can try to stay on the floor more. But at this point, if he's only going to be playing those spot minutes, he has some fouls to give. So I love to see him try to fix that, but in this game, like you mentioned, I don't think that his time in the game did anything to sink the Bucks. One thing for Milwaukee that I'm looking to see going forward is just better execution down the stretch. When was it FanDuel Sports Network now showed a graphic in the game, I think it was during the fourth quarter, that the Bucks numbers split between the third and the fourth quarter and just how drastic they are. Like they're tied first in the league entering to this game in points per total points in the quarter, 35.3 in the third, tied first for field goal percentage at 62%, tied or third and 3-point percentage, tied first for assists. But in the fourth quarter, you see them in the bottom third of the league in those very same categories: points, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and assist. And tonight, it made more sense. Like second night of a back-to-back, you had guys playing some heavy minutes tonight on the second night, expected to a certain degree, but like want to see that continued execution sustained 48 minutes for this Bucks team going forward. They got to put it together. Like you mentioned, they're still looking for an identity at this point. I did see George Karl on Twitter say that teams tend to need about 30, 40 games to be able to find their identity. So if you want to take some solace in George Karl's coaching opinions, you got that going for you as well. But we got to get ready to wrap up here. Frank, any last thoughts in the last couple of minutes before we get out?
I mean, it's weird to say I want to see more Bucks basketball. But yeah, honestly, like, I mean, kind of just as someone who likes to try to analyze and understand, when things are going well or poorly, like why and what is this team going to be like, and what does this team look like fully formed? Yeah, I just kind of want to see more games, just to get more kind of reps and just kind of gather more data, because I think and honestly because I just don't really like sitting around thinking about the Bucks being on a losing streak. So it's like, just bring me another game, so maybe they can actually win one. Maybe some 3-pointers can go in and they can actually win a game. So yeah, we'll see. What is Memphis up next?
Memphis on Thursday in Memphis.
Thursday?
Yep.
Okay, so they get a couple days off to try to get a little bit right. I know Doc talked about Chris and really didn't say a whole lot other than he's, playing some 3-on-3 and doing some
maybe
stuff.
He can play 5-on-5 in between this game and that game.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, but yeah, they obviously need something, and maybe one of those young guys. Maybe we see a little bit more of them. But obviously, like, some positives, I guess, for they weren't as bad tonight. But I mean, let's call a spade. Like they right now, they don't look like a team that is ever going to bother the Boston Celtics a whole lot.
Yeah, they got to figure it out.
I think there's I do think there's a version of the world where they could, but right now, like, they're not close to that yet. They got a lot of work to do. But again, seasons are long, and I think, again, like, at this point, though, it's like you gotta kind of make sure that you're not just digging yourself a deep
Too big of a
well.
hole.
Yeah, like a deep well that you fall into before.
Like the guy in that commercial that's carrying all the supplies. You don't want to stumble into.
If that guy falls into a well after
right, you don't want that to be you.
Buckets and whatever. Yeah, so don't be that guy. But so anyway, a couple of days to marinate, Camille. I look forward to not podcasting about the Bucks for a couple of days. I'm sorry that you don't get that.
Cleanse.
I'm sorry that you and Justin don't get that same benefit. But I don't know, Justin, we haven't talked to you, I guess.
No, we haven't heard from Justin.
Yeah, Justin hasn't had to face the music here since the Bucks became bad. So come on down, Justin. The water's not great, but
we're going to throw some floaties in the pool for you, Justin, when you get back over here to try to stay afloat. But we'll be back tomorrow with more Locked On Bucks for you. Let us know in the comments how you guys feel about the Bucks start. I know you guys, I don't have to tell you that. I know you will on the YouTube side of things. So let us know what you thought of the performances of Giannis, of Dame, what the Bucks could do better. If there are any players you see trending down, let us know. And as a reminder, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Bucks daily newsletter. Head over to lockedondaily.com and sign right on up. So for Frank and myself, We'll catch you later.